I will speak, and that is not a big loss. My first thing that I want to say is I am chairing and I am moderating an illustrious panel because I cannot put myself in the position that I chair a group of chairs. It's a bit of a tautology that I find it quite challenging.
That makes you the sofa, doesn't
it? That's exactly it. So, but I'll be standing in order to separate. So these are the people that will be doing one of the most important activities and helping with one of the most important activities in UKTIN. Without kind of further ado, I will be kind of introducing all of you one by one and then asking a question. But to set the scene for this particular panel, as you have heard in the morning session, which seemed to have been a lot more popular than this one, there was, come on, I need to get a bit of a relaxation in. UKTIN, in its purpose, is very, very clear. And our exam questions to our team will be that, will the event of today effectively lead to a better understanding? And out of the three biggest things that UKTIN will do, which is to create for the first time a very, very strong ecosystem, a very strong focused ecosystem on telecommunications with a particular strength in looking towards building capabilities in the telecommunication systems area in the UK for the future. And as part of that, there will be many activities touching on skills, on research translation, on mapping the capabilities and the landscape. But this particular panel will be covering on how are we in the UKTIN, based on a very, very wide and broad consultation with many of you in the room and many, many others that are not here, have decided to approach this. And fundamentally, in the telecommunications R&D, the biggest concern and the biggest challenge is around fragmentation. That fragmentation comes because individual technology areas effectively are not working as well across into a system build approach in the telecommunication space, and also the telecommunication area is very, very, very spread out. And I will give an example that is very, very close to home, which is close to the Catapult network. So we have Digital Catapult, where I am a director of technology for 5G, which does many things, as you heard from Joe Butler, but one of the most important and by far the biggest program of work is in telecommunication. But the key word there is that Digital Catapult is focusing on digital technologies, including telecommunications. We also work quite closely with Satellite Applications Catapult, one of our sister catapults, who are also looking across the space, satellite technology, who are also very, very keen and are working already on communication, SATCOMs. So again, they cover a broad space, including telecommunications. We also have Compound Semiconductors Catapult, that it is looking at semiconductors space, which is looking across many, many different things where semiconductors apply, including telecoms. And there is a need for coordinating these three activities across three different organizations, touching on different sectors. And that is primarily what the view of building a more cohesive, community-driven, inclusive, and hopefully a long-term standing view of what will be the roadmap for the UK capabilities in telecoms to grow in order to meet the needs of the country and potentially the rest of the world around the telecom space over the next 5 to 10 years. So looking forward to 2025 to 2035. And this is what we set up with vertical expert working groups that will provide deep insight into roadmap technology development, like what was mentioned earlier on today, Henrik mentioned, technology development versus technology innovation. And then all of these outputs in terms of the white papers will be combined to effectively look at where the whole telecommunication ecosystem can come together and provide strengths. So first, what is strong in the UK? Second, where is the industry going? Not just in the UK, but in general in the world. And the third, where should we invest in order to build those capabilities? And the gentleman and the lady that is sitting with me now, or they are sitting, I'm standing, will be the people that will coordinate together with Digital Catapult and University of Bristol and the rest of the UKTIN consortium, the work in building this particular programmatic approach to the telecommunication capability roadmap development for the future. So without further ado, because now I think we have got everyone in the room, and I was a filler. We have a very large panel, and I will start by kind of standing. And I would ask all of you to introduce yourself. And my kind of first question will be, as part of your specific expertise area and specific focus in the UKTIN expert working group, what would be from your perspective, what do you see from your perspective, the key challenge and drivers for taking advantage of the UK strengths, where they are, to rebuild or build further the UK capabilities in the telecoms ecosystems? And I will start with Barry.
Okay, thank you, Dritan. My name's Barry Evans. I'm a professor in the Institute for Communication Systems and 6G IC at the University of Surrey. My main background is in satellite communications, but I've also been involved in mobile over the years. So that's my role, as it were. First of all, I'd kind of like to say that I was delighted to see that UKTIN had selected non-terrestrial networks as one of the expert working groups, because I happen to think this is one of the more futuristic and one of the major opportunities we have in the future. Perhaps it's a well-worn cliche, but I happen to think that space is the next frontier, particularly in telecommunications, because I think this is fairly virgin territory. We have an opportunity in the UK to grab this and create innovation and bring people together to actually occupy this space. I was kind of interested this morning. One of the questions were from the audience, what are we world class in? And I thought, I wish the questioner had said, what could we be world class in? And I think non-terrestrial networks offers that opportunity. We've got all the elements if I look across the UK. We have a space program, well funded, not particularly geared into telecommunications, one of the issues. We have companies that actually build satellites and launch them. We have mobile networking people. We have software people, cloud users, etc. And the question is, these are all the elements which actually are needed for the non-terrestrial network's future. So I think one of the challenges of this particular expert working group is how we bring all that together and focus it on the challenges of non-terrestrial networks. And I think that's probably my main challenge. I think definitely I spent the last 2 days at a 6G symposium at Surrey, and a lot of speakers looking at requirements for 6G. And you know what came out top? Coverage. And it was there for 5G, but we haven't delivered it. But for 6G, we absolutely must deliver it. And I think that's why this area is going to be very important.
Thank you, Barry. And Simon?
Thanks, Dritan, and good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I'm Simon Saunders, and I've been involved in telecoms networks, particularly wireless telecoms networks, since I built my first crystal set at the age of 8. And over that period of time, I'd say broadly, the UK's strengths and capabilities in wireless networking have risen from what was already a very high base, and then probably fell fairly substantially at a period that probably started around the turn of the millennium. What I hope is that today and a number of activities around today are the start of a swing back in the other direction. So I'm very happy to be chairing the Wireless Networking Technologies Expert Working Group to see how we can build on that. So I think there are a number of strengths around the UK. There are a surprising number of companies that have requisite skills. They aren't necessarily in telecoms. There's a lot of RF expertise in medical imaging, in the space sector, as Barry's been talking about, in defence, of course. So we're going to have to reach beyond our comfort zone, as it were, to make the most of that. And there's a number of sort of not onlys I hope for my group. So not only mobile and cellular, but also unlicensed and short-range technologies, not only licensed technologies, but unlicensed technologies in Wi-Fi and so on. Not only even communications. Now, I may be stretching the T in UKTIN a little bit here, but given what I said, I think we have to think about sensing, about radar, about broadcast as well as being sources for that. And likewise, not only the physical layer. So we will be interested in RF technologies and what happens right down at the physical layer, but we're also interested in signal processing, we're interested in protocols, we're interested in network topologies and new network architectures for wireless within the wider telecoms and digital space. There's been a lot of talk today about where we can win in or where we can be world leaders in, and I think that's good for creating ambition. But I would also like us to think a little bit about things that we must have capability in. There are obvious areas like security and resilience where we must have sovereign capability locally, and I feel we've even let some of that slip over recent times. So we may need to identify some of those must-have table stakes as well. But if any of that speaks to you, please do consider throwing your hats in the ring to join my group. Thought I'd get in there before the other chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Simon. Yui?
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Wang. I'm the head of 6G research at Samsung UK. So in this role, I lead a team working on the 6G network architecture and the AI for networks. So before leading this team, my team was working on applying AI to the network operation and management, to improve the network performance, to enhance network efficiency, reduce network cost. So over the years, I've working on applying AI to the networks, I have experienced the challenges firsthand. And I have to say, a lot of these challenges are not just technical, and a lot of challenges are not the sort of challenges that we can address by telecom on our own. So it could be data, it could be cloud infrastructure, it could be compute, it could be regulatory ethics. So all the big scopes lie in the challenges for applying AI to the telecom. So that's why I'm very excited to be here today and as a chair of AI EWG. And I really look forward to have a really good understanding from the views of the other members in this group to really understand, where are our gaps, where are our opportunities, and how do we go from here. Now, the gaps of applying AI to the telecom networks, and rather actually to use AI to help the growth of the telecom network, I mainly see two gaps here. One is from the R&D of the building the AI models to actually deploy it and to commercialize the AI technologies. And the second gap is really where we are now, as a telecom industry, compared to where the rest of the world is. So by that, I mean some of the industry sectors are looking to be digitalized. They are looking for advanced technologies. This is where our opportunities are. And then there are some other sectors that are more advanced in the AI technologies, and this is where our gaps are and where we can actually build our knowledge upon and to get the lessons learned, to have the knowledge transfer. So I see there is a big group of stakeholders actually that we can bring into this group and really to have that collected view and to help us to really understand the challenges and the opportunities in this area.
Thank you very much, Yui. And David, on the security?
Thanks, Simon. No pressure. Incidentally, I just want to reassure you that lots of people have already got them, so you're a bit slow, mate. You've got to be quicker off the mark there. I've been in telecoms 37 years. I know it's difficult to believe I still look this young. Two things, really. I'll keep my comments short. If you haven't got trust, all go home. If we can't secure these networks and defend these networks, and that will need to be at an international level as well. So to Niels, I say you raised a really important point this morning. I heard you, we listened, the emails are already in your inbox. The second thing I'd say is cost. He's holding up the phone, it's a good sign. I looked up some stats as to how much Huawei spent in 2018 on global R&D. It was 18 billion. If it was 15 billion, it really doesn't matter. It was a big number. It's certainly bigger than DCIT's budget. But then again, most of the leading vendors will have budgets bigger than DCIT. So we have to be realistic as to what we can achieve. We're volunteers. We're here because we care about it. We need to draw on your expertise. And damn it, it's the one thing the UK is really good at. I'm not afraid of our cyber capability. I think we can do more. I'd simply, however, point to one thing. The most recent study that came out from DCIT that was done last week indicated that UK businesses are actually spending less in this area and the threat's gone up. So somehow we might be doing some of the greatest R&D in the world. We've got to find better ways to make sure people adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David. And Tom.
Tom Bennett, CTO at Freshwave. We're a neutral host provider, and I can't do much more than my colleagues have already said. I'll reflect on something Joe said this morning. What I do think the UK has, and it's the thing I'll focus on as I run the network management work stream. Somebody's going to be paying us all. To your point, Dave, and very much to your point, you, about commercialization, everything we do here, ultimately there's a customer, be that us in the room, or a business, an enterprise, whatever it may be. So I do see the UK is a lot more advanced in any of the other markets about, well, who is your network provider? Who actually built your network? And I think that will continue over the next 10 years. More and more, there will be different network providers. Our challenge is still to guarantee the customer experience and to talk the customer's language. I've been lucky enough to work on a couple of contracts over the years where there's been real juxtaposition between the telecoms industry saying, yeah, we're great at this, and then not talking the customer's language, not understanding their regulations, not understanding their needs. So for me, in network management in particular, I'll be absolutely focusing on, regardless of who's provided the network, and I think that's some of the issues that Simon and Yo touched on, you still need to guarantee the service. So I think that's our challenge for the next 10 years.
And last but by no means least, Neil, please.
Thanks. So I'm Neil McRae. I look after the working group for core network technologies, which is probably the worst scope definition that I could ever come up with. But in effect, I have to bring all these guys here together, is how I look at it. Look, the UK is a leading digital nation. We've achieved amazing things that other countries and other parts of the world would only dream of. And I think it's crucially important as the UK becomes more and more of a knowledge economy that we maintain that leadership, we grow it, and actually we do even better. And you know, I think we're across all of the working groups and across all of the technologies, the UK has got many amazing things going on that perhaps aren't even that well known. We have people designing routing silicon here in the UK. We have most of the MPLS technologies, there was a bunch of UK guys that helped create them. These are all things that underpin every moment of our day. And people really don't understand that we are a leader in creating them. So I want to do two things. I want to bring all these things together so that we've got an amazing platform that customers, developers, artists, musicians can use to create the capabilities that they want. We have to do it in a secure way. We have to know that it works. We have to know that it works well. But I think the UK is super well placed, and I'm really keen and excited to work with everyone here and all you to really start to position the UK in a much more stronger place than perhaps we give ourselves credit for, but also take that forward with a slight touch of Scottish pragmatism, so that we realise that, you know, there are users out there that require certain things. How do we make that economically? How do we translate that into the right outcome so that we can continue to invest and build, not just in telecoms, but across the whole UK industry? But also we have one of the leading educational establishments across all of the UK that really stand out in telecoms. We have Bristol, we have Southampton, Surrey, where we are so far ahead of some of the other places, but we're not taking as much advantage of it as we can. So when we say we're a leading digital nation, I actually think we could be much further than where we are. And I really cherish the opportunity and the honour of leading this team to those fantastic outcomes that our customers, users, subscribers, builders, developers, musicians, whoever use the network, can really perform at their best, and the UK can be a bright star in the knowledge economy.
Thank you very much, everyone. And I want to flag only two things. I can't summarize what they said because they have done it very, very well. But if I might say, number one, we deliberately define some of the worst scopes for the working groups because we expect people to pick it up and fix it. So that's not true, but still. But to pick up, I think we also have a representation from English pragmatism through David. So already said that just to balance across the nations. And to be kind of absolutely inclusive. But picking up on kind of what you said there, because I think in our discussions and in the discussions in the room, UKTIN has been almost 2.5 years in building as a need and being identified. It was identified as a need even under UK 5G, but because of the focus of the program at that time to be primarily or entirely on technology adoption, the research which is needed on both technology adoption and technology development was not such a high priority. It is certainly a high priority now, because not only because of geopolitical and government strong interest, which is always extremely welcomed and positive, but primarily because we understand that the telecoms industry is going through a major kind of transformation. It is going in a transformation because of maturity of technologies. It's going through a transformation because it's sitting on top of a large pile of patents and innovation and research that has happened in the past. It is facing certain challenges in the market because of the maturity of the market, almost being commoditized as a connectivity, but also, and it is represented very, very clearly, telecoms industry as a whole, and in particular exemplified in a visible way, but not only, by the mobile industry, has been extremely innovative. It has been almost reinventing the technology in a pace of 10 years, and of course an adoption of 10 to 15 years beyond that. But it has been very much an inward, a consumer-facing business, and now we are faced with digitalization need. It is a critical infrastructure that is required to support a lot of other technologies. So I think the working groups effectively reflect areas and technologies in which there is research and there is some cohesive thinking in most of the places and at different levels. But whilst the UK, we heard, has been characterized by an extremely strong academic research, the industrial R&D has not as kind of been in a slight decline. It is showing signs with inward investment already happening in starting to grow. But it is significantly fragmented. And in your individual areas, how do you see that fragmentation coming together for the first time in a kind of a proper telecom systems thinking for the capability build? Because not all capabilities will be built in the UK. That is kind of ridiculous. It requires huge investment but also it is not necessary because we have both international international partners. So I'll start with that, probably from a fragmentation with a very, very specific infrastructure provider view. I also want, before you continue with question, to flag that none of our illustrious expert working group chairs represent necessarily the views of their companies. And even in the introduction, they downplayed what the companies and where they came from. And thank you very, very much for that. But Tom, if you could effectively come to this, how do you see the working groups coming together into a telecom system thinking for prioritizing potential interventions and capability growth in the future?
Good question, no idea. No. Collaboration is going to be the key. Ultimately, it's got to be collaboration. Collaboration, as you've heard everybody on this panel articulate. You yourself have just said around the growth in networks over the next decade is going to be less around single particular vendors, more about multiplicity. We've talked ad infinitum over the course of this day around the commercialization of that, how every industry wants to be digitized. Thank you, Yo. And therefore, collaboration is going to ultimately be the key. As an example, Yo, obviously, from a network management perspective, I'm sat there thinking there's no way you're going to be able to manage the customer experience across multiple networks, including satellites, without AI. So for me, the ultimate key is collaboration. I'd also add, I think, for UK PLC, I'm going to challenge and look around the room. I'd ask anybody under the age of 35 to put their hand up. Nice try, Dave. I think that might be one of the other challenges as UKTIN, as Union Jack, is we need to entice and empower and mobilise the next generation to look after these networks when the likes of this panel have long since paid their mortgages off.
Thank you. Anyone else that wants to pick up on that? Simon, yeah?
I mean, I agree with everything that Tom said, but a potentially slightly contrarian view to something you said about the ecosystem. Just to advance the possibility that actually, I mean, I agree the ecosystem isn't perfectly tuned at this point, but it might be that that's symptom rather than cause of the relatively, the gaps in UK capability. That I think if we had, the level of active SMEs through to scale-ups and beyond in the UK, I think the ecosystem would build itself quite naturally. Those things would be visible, people would flock to them. And if we go back, I was talking about, things improving generally and then perhaps not improving, characterising the peak was actually a mix of both homegrown UK companies and substantial multinational companies who chose to base large bits of their R&D capability in the UK. And the ecosystem kind of grew out of that combination, along with the sort of academic research, which I'm delighted has managed to cling on in there in the intervening period. So I think creating those opportunities. So it's been great to see, Ericsson and Samsung and Nokia and Parallel Wireless and others investing in UK R&D. That's a very good sort of seed for that sort of thing. What I'd like to see at the other end is UK companies who are consumers of this technology, and we heard some of them on the panel earlier on, actually putting some commitment into this to be takers up. I don't know what form that takes, but for example, they could decide they are going to let some UK companies trial their telecoms technologies in their networks at a certain level over the next 2 years. Or they are going to, and of course those companies will have to prove their salt. They will have to prove their technology delivers on what those operators' needs are. They're going to meet the customer requirements that Tom speaks so eloquently about. But let's provide some space for them, provide a route to market, and it will be up to them to make the most of it.
Thank you, Simon. David, and then Barry, yeah.
Thanks. Again, I found myself agreeing with Simon, which is quite scary and very reassuring. It means at least we're thinking along the same lines. The thing that's troubling me, I'm actually non-executive director of a company that started as a spin-out from one of the 5G testbed and trial programs around 5G connected boys. We started down in Dorset, incidentally, for those of you that know your history, where Alan Turing was schooled, Sherborne School. So a major plug for Dorset there. I'll get one in for Cambridge as well, Jaron, in a moment. But what troubled me, what still troubles me, is it's actually very difficult to do your research and development in the United Kingdom. And that's partly the function of the fact of how funding is given to people. And it seems to me terribly tiresome, especially for an elderly gentleman, and very, very complicated. I also don't like the percentages. If I'm a manufacturer of some bleeding edge equipment or some particular funky piece of software, I want to get that software out into the market, and I'm not going to subsidize it just because I'm told that I should do it here. I'll go to Germany or I'll go to France. This is reality of what's happening. I understand why the rules are there. I know there's no easy solution to this, but we need to wake up and smell the coffee, because if we know we've got a problem, what are we going to do about it? Is there a way in which we can look at this in a more intelligent and pragmatic way? And thank you for the plug for British pragmatism. I'll use the word British, I'm part Irish.
I didn't know your background, so I put myself out of it, but thanks. And Barry.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to come back to, the potential overlap between our working groups, which is bound to exist, and we will need to work together fairly closely. Thinking particularly in my area, where we are already seeing this convergence of mobile and satellite. We have now satellite standards, 2 satellite standards, 3GPP standards, which people are producing chips on at the moment. We have several companies who are demonstrating direct to handhelds, conventional handhelds around the world. this is kind of, it's uprooting the industry a little bit. And I think this convergence will cut across several of our working groups, and we'll have to stick pretty closely together on this. I didn't want non-terrestrial networks to just be satellites, by the way. It's also high altitude platforms, and I think particularly kind of aerial devices in the troposphere, which hasn't had a particular high profile at the moment, but I think it's something that we need to encompass in our activities. And Dritan said, we've got a very good academic community in the UK. The interesting thing is, in non-terrestrial networks, there's very little in academia. And I see, again, one of my challenges is to try to encourage the very good sort of people we have in software engineering, in networking and so forth, to understand some of the challenges, some of the new challenges that you face if you actually converge the terrestrial systems with the non-terrestrial systems. And I think that's going to be a big challenge.
If I may, rather than ask you and Neil specifically on this, and if I may bring, because it was very clear across the four answers, a very, very strong focus around kind of innovation, and not necessarily near-term innovation, but innovation. But if I may flip it over in the way that Henrik and Maria in the previous session, but in particular Henrik mentioned, he made the division, he made a distinction, not a division, he made a distinction between what he called technology evolution, which is fundamentally, I would call it, applied research and invention. And he said technology innovation, which is more towards the adoption of the technology and putting it into the field. And as we know, until now, there has been quite a significant, and when we talk about the academic research being good in the UK, it is very, very often ahead of the rest of the world. I was lucky yesterday to hear about some very, very advanced terahertz research in the UK that has been going on for 12 to 15 years. And it is coming now into focus because, lo and behold, terahertz is becoming a bit of an interesting and, more importantly, possible technology. So starting with you and then moving to Neil, where do you think you will see the groups developing a bit? We cannot stop the curiosity research. You cannot even direct the curiosity-driven research. We shouldn't even attempt to drive the curiosity-driven research. But at the same time, we want to have a bit of a more programmatic approach in order to help people where impact might be delivered. How do you see in your group, and Neil later on, the balancing between these two particular areas? Because that is effectively the overlap between the academic and the industry R&D.
Yeah, sure. I think first of all, we need to keep an open mind. I mean, technology is constantly evolving. So if you look at the ecosystem of the telecom industry, the big players now may not be the big players in 10 years' time, and they may not be the same big players in 10 years ago. So I think the technology is evolving, and we do need to always keep an open mind and keep the researching and the innovation going. And then at the same time, we need to also to look how to put those technologies into the real system. So for example, take AI, for example, a lot of academic research would focus on the performance of the AI models, right? They take the data and they design AI models, for example, to predict something, and evaluation of the AI model is how accurate that prediction is. Right, and when you come from an industry perspective, you would ask, how accurate is accurate enough? If it's 95% is actually accurate enough, or is it 99% we are looking for? So we need to have that practical view in terms of developing the research and development and the innovations. And then another example in the AI field is that when you look at putting the AI models into the network at the moment, we still kind of try to look into specific problems in a specific network domain. It's not scalable when it comes to the real network, right? Because the network is connected, and this will cause problems. For example, the different AI models will conflict with each other, and there would need to have an end-to-end view of the deployment of the AI models when it comes to the practical network. So I think we need to keep an open mind. We need to keep driving the research and the innovation. At the same time, we need to consider how these technologies can actually be applied to the practical system, and let's say in the near term, 3 to 5 years, compared to the 10 years longer term research.
Thank you very much. Gil, your views?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. It's kind of related to the fragmentation question to some extent as well. But in my mind, we can't stop experimenting. We've got to try things and adjust them and tweak them and build as wide a base that's aware of this technology. Over the last 4 years, I've become an expert in gallium nitrate. I've never heard of it before, but it's one of the key technologies in telecoms now. And it came from almost nowhere. Well, for me, it came from almost nowhere, but there's people working on it for 15, 20 years. So, how do we join those two things together in a way that people are aware that there's technology coming here, but also that those developing it really understand some of the practicalities of how we translate into something deployable. We've had many technologies where they come out where it's like, look, it's brilliant, but it's really difficult to deploy it. So that's one of the reasons why I felt my involvement in this group would be great, because, I've kind of been through a lot of technology deployments, some great, some could be better. And I really think that having an inclusive approach to it is the only way that we'll do this. But also, we also have to have, like, how many of you got kids where you tell them they're a great singer and they're really not?
We need someone powerful.
We have to make sure that, when we're playing in tune, we're really in tune, right? And be not to be evil and horrible, but to then pivot to something else, or to adjust, or to make it better, right? And quite often, I've seen that in our industry. It's not just a British thing; it's a global thing. But and then also, what's the so what? When I worked at BT, I get 5 calls a day from some company who had something that I must stop everything to go and talk to these people. And some of them, had great technology. Some of them are like, well, it's just what Fred's got or someone else has got. So what's really unique about it? What really, why is it going to make a real difference? And actually, what can I bring to it that enables you to progress in proving this capability and this technology? And I don't think there's a one size fits all, but I think what we can do is ensure that the environment for that type of work is there, and we create the right environment for it to be successful. And that doesn't mean to say every technology bears fruit. Quite often there's lots of successes out there that pivot into something else. Gallium nitrate, I think, is probably one of them, right? So in my mind, we need to develop the silver bullet machine gun, which allows us to solve all the problems at the same time. Of course, we're never going to do that, but if we experiment, we keep open-minded, then I think we'll discover lots of great, fantastic things that are out there. I recently worked with a spin-out of Southampton University called Luminicity, building an amazing product that I don't know how many people told me it would never work, and that yet they just sold the business to Microsoft for a large sum of cash, I believe. I hope so, anyway. But how do we in that scenario? How do I help someone like Luminicity or the next great thing take that product and build it into platforms and capabilities? And I think that's one of the great things about this panel, that, when it was announced, was the various different focus areas and experience areas that we all bring. And my hope is that both in my old establishment and my new establishments, I can somehow join some of that thinking up to say, here's what the big challenges are. But again, let's be really focused on the users of the network and those that want to consume the network. And because I think in our industry and the things that we develop, having seen a bit of it from the vendor side now, I think there's definitely room for improvement.
Thank you very much. And and the pun is intended. What you mentioned there is connectivity between people, which is exactly what UKTIN is doing. And also the second thing, which is primarily moving from what is fundamentally, and it has worked until now extremely well, but it is probably an extreme case of competition, both competition within academia and competition within the industry, into a more collaborative space which doesn't preclude competition when it comes to running the business, but it's a collaboration in terms of building the right businesses for the future and the right technologies for the right businesses in the future. Also, I wanted to flag that, of course, UKTIN is looking across academia and industry, and we are not alone. We are aligned with EPSRC, which is running 3 very, very academic-focused hubs on 3 large areas. One which is wireless, which covers both Barry's and Simon's kind of areas. One which is network of networks, which again covers a bit on some of the other groups, and we deliberately have done that. We have spoken to the people, and some of the people that run those consortia and those hubs are members of the UKTIN, and as well as the network intelligence, the AI group. And they will be interfaced, and they will be bringing all of that academic engagement into the UKTIN. So it's not going to be a separation. The byword in UKTIN is to try to create a collaborative environment for that particular word that my boss used earlier this morning, which is that secretariat. And we are here to effectively serve. I want to open the floor. I have a couple more questions for the panel, but I want to get some questions from the floor before we close, and then I can continue. Anyone? Yes, please. Lady over there.
Hi there, my name's Holly Marshall. I'm an independent consultant. I work across terrestrial telecoms and non-terrestrial telecoms. So it's just, what a fantastic initiative. I'm so impressed that we've got this opportunity, and it's such a great need that we're able to fill here today, which is absolutely fantastic. And I'm also so delighted to see so many huge leaders in industry being involved in UKTIN. What I struggle with a little bit is, how do we really hope to drive innovation in this country without really staffing up this organisation with people from industries that really have managed to innovate really successfully? You know, where is SpaceX? I think there's some OneWeb involvement, but where are the people from Google? Where are the autonomous vehicle sectors? Where are the neurodiversity folks? You're all lovely, but you look and sound the same.
I tend to I personally will agree with that comment. And it's not like we are not aware. So I'll let the panel to answer rather than myself. I do apologize because the sound here is a bit, is nothing to do with microphone, etc. But it's a bit hard. I want to check, did everyone get the question? Which is, yes, if I can repeat without paraphrasing, and please come back if I don't get it right. So the question is this too inward looking, as in a telecoms industry? Where are the other innovators from outside of the pure telecommunications industry? Is that
perfect?
Yes. So that is the question, Simon.
So I think it's a really, really valid
Perfect.
point.
Yeah.
The great thing is we have the chance now to populate our groups with a representative cross-section. And I'm certainly very keen to make sure that we have not just, we're not just talking to ourselves, that we've got large-scale companies involved. We've got small-scale companies involved. We've got companies that are dealing with the end users, and we've got companies that are dealing not just with telecoms technology, but adjacent technologies that could be applicable to telecoms. That was some of what I was wanting to say before. That said, scale is definitely one of the challenges that we deal with right across this discussion, right? And the size of the UK, the amount of funding available, the size of market we represent, and so on. That takes us into some areas. We can identify niches that we can do really well at, do a big part of a small thing, or find niches within the larger telecoms networks that we can just do powerfully, and maybe the AI area is one of those. So a small part of a big thing. The other thing we can do is, there's nothing like a good problem to stimulate innovation. I was listening this morning to the history of the invention of radio, which has an awful lot of UK achievements and people associated with it. But did you know, for example, the first use of semiconductors in wireless networks arose because the weather in India, which didn't allow the powder detectors of the time to work well. I think we can create quite parochial problems that actually turn into very big inventions if we create those challenges in a good way. So just a couple of thoughts about that. But we do have representatives of high
I was going to
advisory board and beyond. So, it's well known.
Neil,
Yeah, I mean, I think
then
I agree with Simon. We want to, it's open to anyone who wants to join us, but I think you also highlight some of the problem. Who has the most AI patents in the UK? British Telecom. So I look at this is the challenge. We have tons of great technology. It's being created by great technologists that isn't making it out into the marketplace. So for sure, we need to partner with people like Google. And again, telemetry that every network's rolling out right now, British Telecom and Google created it. So from my perspective, there's probably no size that fits the solution. But by being as inclusive, and we're trying to attract loads of people into the teams that come from as wide and as diverse a background, not just technologists, but actually potentially also users of the technology. I think that's how we solve it. One of the first companies to connect mobile via satellite, BT again. Vodafone yesterday announced the first handset talking to a satellite. So I do think we play a part in it bigger than we actually give ourselves credit for. And I think that's my challenge to everyone in the room. If we don't believe it as Britain, no one else is going to believe it. So my challenge to all of you is get involved, help us out, bring solutions, bring problems that you can help us solve solutions to. Don't bring us moans and whinges. They're not really that helpful. I'm not saying that's what you're saying. But I do feel that sometimes we really underplay the amazing capabilities and technologies that we create here in the UK. And our challenge is to change that mindset, adjust the thinking of that. And because actually, I now work for a large US technology company. They're super impressed with what we do here in the UK. They would love to do more here with us. So I really think we undersing our own capability. But the great thing is we've got a great opportunity here to actually go out there and make a difference. And that's why I'm here.
thank you very much. Yue.
I'll be very brief. Yeah, I think we also need to look definitely outside of the telecom sector, and we also need to look into the consumer of the technology. So they don't necessarily understand the technologies behind telecom or AI. They are the ones who really have the real problems where telecom can actually solve. So I'll give you one example. So there is a startup that they do the strawberry picking, and they have the robotics arms, and because they do strawberry packing, they need to be really delicate. And the thing is, they need the localization of the robotics arms. And surely, I was talking to them. I was surely you are using cellular network, right? No, we are using Wi-Fi. Why not cellular network? Because we don't have coverage, because it's a farm, right? So, those are the real examples and real opportunities for telecom. But if we don't look outside of the telecom sector, we don't necessarily understand their problem, and they don't necessarily come to us, actually.
Thank you. And Barry, you?
Yeah, just a very brief comment. Agree with Simon. We have to populate our working groups with, people from cognate disciplines, etc. And that's where the breakthroughs are going to come from. So I think that is very important. In my area, international is very important. These days, low Earth orbiting satellites are international. They're not just focused over one country. So we have to be aware of the international scene and bring that in. But I think, many of the challenges that we face, we can't cover them all. We can't boil the sea. We've got to actually find niches. We've got to find niches where we have the talent in the UK and the way for to actually look at particular areas where we can make a real difference. And I think that's something, again, that the working groups need to address.
David, do you want to come in? Or?
Thanks. Two quick ones. Well, I started as a professional transport manager, having done 2 years as a school cleaner before I did a scholarship. My background's very different. I'm still here, and I welcome others that have a similar diverse background from wherever they come. And I'm delighted to say that today, a postgraduate student, a young lady from the University of Exeter, has joined the Security Expert Working Group. If we want to start addressing equality and issues around diversity and where experience come from, then we need to be doing that and living it ourselves. And I hope you'll find that that gives you some comfort, because the other company we're dealing with on robotics is Qualcomm, and we were actually destroying individual weeds in a field using millimeter wave spectrum and super new chipsets. So perhaps you and I will go off and find a new business venture together.
If I may come, and it was an absolutely great question. And to back it up, as Neil said, we have representatives from other industries in the advisory board, and absolutely in the working groups. There will be representatives from all kinds of companies and organizations in academia on areas that can contribute into the telecommunications. So I think we don't all sound the same. For me, it will be a privilege, probably, but I don't think we do. But you are absolutely right. The fundamental challenge in the telecoms, it is also maturity and the transference from adjacent technologies, for which not only the expert working group chairs, but the expert working groups will need to bring in terms of cloudification, transference. Open RAN is fundamentally a CI/CD, IT software management problem, as well as a technology problem. So that is definitely something that we don't anticipate to be. We would have failed if this is a telecoms only group. We would have failed. If I may ask for a very, very kind of quick, is there any other quick question? If I can ask the panel to be brief on this, because I want to ask a very, very final kind of question for 30 seconds if we have time, and I want to finish on time.
Monica Paulini, Senza Fili. A question, clearly your focus is on the UK, but you need to reach a global market. The global market, there's a lot of geopolitical tensions that actually seem to favor more of a parochial approach in some countries. How can you make sure that you can actually reach for everybody and go beyond all those tensions that clearly we cannot avoid, so that you reach out for everybody. You can collaborate with anybody. We don't have, I heard somebody talking about British standards. We don't want to have that. So how can we counter that kind of pressure?
Well, just to say, one of the things we're not going to do is to have a UK standard. Okay, we have to be cognizant of what's happening in the standards activity, but standards are global. And I think it would be wrong for us to actually try to develop a national standard.
David?
Really quickly, there are many of us in the UK that look out and not in. Most of my life I've spent in the mainland of Europe, outside of the United Kingdom, despite holding a UK passport. The first person I responded to today, having spoken to, was our gentleman from Latvia, Niels, and it's great to think that we do have that interest. And for international standards in particular, believe me, we will be looking outwards as well as inwards. Looking inwards, you see your own navel. That's not what I want to see. I want to see what else is going on.
Thank you very much, David, for that.
I think
it's a very, very kind of broad answering of the question. Neil?
I think the answer to that is if we build great stuff, people will come to us.
Yeah, definitely.
Look at Nokia, and they used to make tires. Now everyone uses them all over the world for telecommunications. So start with the code. Bring me the code. Bring me the great code that does amazing things. People will be lining up to get it from us. So, and there's other examples of that in the UK. Look at the video game industry in the UK. It is massive, and these are super skilled engineers creating unbelievably complex 3D and amazing storylines. We can do that. I think this is a walk in the park to some extent. So, I really, for me, it's bring me the amazing stuff. And the great thing is I go to universities like Bristol, there's tons of amazing stuff out there. We've just got to mobilize it.
Thank you very much. If I may, very, very quickly, so 30 seconds from all of you. So within the next 9 months, so there is a call out for participation in the expert working group. We are looking for about 12 to 15 people in each working group. Very much what the working group chairs will be doing with support from University of Bristol and Digital Catapult, and also other partners, but primarily as satellite applications and compound semiconductors Catapult, is primarily to try to look at technology roadmaps, technology R&D roadmaps for the individual kind of technology areas, and to produce white papers, which will be, of course, very, very much aware of the international dimension. The UK R&D community, academic and industry, is extremely international, both in terms of composition and in terms of working relationships across the world. So we will be aware, but that is what the working groups and the chairs. So there is a call out for participation in that, with a view of contributing directly into, as Neil put it, with questions and problems and challenges and potentially even interventions and solutions to be discussed there and to be consulted widely into the community. But if I can ask the expert working group chairs, we still have 3 chairs to appoint, one in semiconductors, material and devices, one on photonics and optical communications, and also one in the standards, which is not kind of pure R&D. But if I may ask very, very quickly, and we have 3 minutes, 6 people, can we do it with 1 millisecond delay of the 5G? In 30 seconds each. If we produce the white papers, not if, we will produce the white papers, we will get together into that coordinated telecom system view of the challenges that you kind of touched on. What would you consider as a success if you look back at the activity that you are participating in 2 to 5 years? Barry.
Well, I think, roadmap obviously is something that's the initial thing that we're agreed upon with industry and academia. I think a few R&D projects that involve both academia and industry, along the lines of the things that we've seen at the moment with the open networking projects. I think within a couple of years, I'd like to see that in each of the areas. And then I think something we haven't mentioned particularly, at least addressing some of the skill shortages in these areas and trying to at least facilitate, the next generation coming along with the skills to actually solve some of the problems. So I think that's from my side.
I'll mention 3 things. I'd like to identify some hidden gems. I know they're out there. Shine a light on some real UK capability in my area, and allied to that, some opportunities for some of those niche cunning areas that we can be really big in a small area. Secondly, identifying great routes to market. I mentioned earlier on, I think some larger companies who are recipients of this could do more to welcome in, homegrown innovation and give them a starting point. And thirdly, kind of a legacy point. We've got, UKTIN is funded for a certain period, and who knows what happens beyond that. Interventions, as government colleagues would call them, things we can do which will have a lasting impact beyond those 2 years.
Thank you.
So in 3 to 5 years' time, if we see the right investment put into the right area and actually boosted the telecommunication in the business, in the commercialization, I think that would be a really good result from the activities we are doing today.
Thank you. David?
Well, I'd love to bore the ocean, but being practical, I think there's very little that we can do that's going to have a major impact. But what we can do is focus our energies on 1 or 2 small cogs in that machine and maybe influence policy sufficiently that we can get a longer term information strategy. And with great credit to South Korea, who have done this already, why should we not learn from those that have gone before us and done a great job? And if we could have a strategy that lasted for 20 years rather than 20 minutes, I'd be delighted.
Thank you very much. David? Tom?
Excuse me. I think reflect on the comments already made. I mentioned myself about ensuring we are energizing and setting a vision to entice and empower the next generation, as and when this generation do retire. I'll build on something David said, trust. So I think in particular around network management, and I do say this, something you said about the opportunities, as each industry is looking to digitize, looking for the connectivity, they are going to look for the trust. They're going to look for, can I guarantee this is going to happen? This is my business critical process. So therefore, for me, particularly with network management, I'm thinking about, well, can they trust me? Can they trust what we're coming up with?
Brilliant. Neil.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'd love for this to output technology that joins the next landing on the moon, and we're, you know, something as big as that. I'm named after Neil Armstrong, in case you didn't know that. But also, look across the world right now. Telecommunications has brought us all closer together, and for 99% of that, that's been for great. I want to see much more of that. The world's getting a harder place to live in. So anything that we create that helps people get more connected, I think is a win for us. Even if that's one person or 1 million people or 10 million people or billions of people, if we get more people connected so that they can become part of this fantastic industry of technology that we live in, I think for me that'll make me swell up at the end of the day.
Thank you very, very much at that note, and that sounds a lot more appealing than getting to the moon. So the last bit, a lot more appealing. From I genuinely like it. I don't want to even add anything to that, apart from saying we have set ourselves an extremely hard and ambitious goal to build this programmatic approach in telecoms in the UK. It has never been done before. We have done that in other frameworks. We are used to do that within Europe. We will continue to do that with all of the international partners, including in Horizon Europe, as Dimitra mentioned in the morning. But having this particular coordination focus for R&D capabilities in the future in the UK will tremendously help us to focus the energies without stopping any of the curiosity research. On the contrary, leveraging that curiosity research outcomes a lot better. And I want to thank you for applying, volunteering. It was our honor to effectively select you amongst a fantastic group of applicants. And thank you, starting in the opposite order. Neil, Tom, David, Yui, Simon, and Barry, thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. Thank you.